Hello, welcome to Framework. I am Al Schwartz. With me, as usual, John Bernard.
It's me. Hi.
Hey, John. We're here to talk about one of our most frequent topics: giant, big franchise, fantasy-based intellectual property.
Yeah.
Yeah,
On television. Yeah.
yeah, on TV right now. This is a very crowded time for giant, mega-budget fantasy prequel series. We are in the midst of one. We got the main horse race has been framed as between House of the Dragon on HBO, the extension of the Game of Thrones series, and Amazon's Lord of the Rings prequel, The Rings of Power. And I'm also throwing this in there, Andor with on Disney Plus, because it is also a big prequel series, and all of these have just enormous budgets that are showing up on screen. Like one of
Yeah.
the high points of Andor is that it looks good and expensive and real in a way that the Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan Kenobi did not.
It certainly does. They went all out on this one. This appears to be, which surprises me. If you were to tell me which one they were going to spend money on, I would have thought it would have been, Obi-Wan
Boba
Kenobi.
Fett?
But no,
Oh.
either. Those are existing characters that, go back several years. Andor is a dead character from one movie. And from what I could tell, not like one of the breakout popular characters from that. If there were any Rogue One characters that crossed over, I don't think Cassian Andor was like anyone's favorite in that. He was good.
I don't think he was anybody's second
Yeah.
favorite, except for maybe
No.
me, actually. I really liked him in that movie, and I was not quite as taken with the duo of the blind monk and his buddy. That seemed to be the fan favorites generally.
Oh yeah, Chirrut
Uh,
Imwe and
yeah,
Baze Malbus, absolutely. Yeah.
right. Uh, but I really like Diego Luna in that role, and it does if you're right, while he's not the most immediate like standout, favorite of that bunch, he's maybe the most easily spin-offable, because he's
Yes.
the one who is the deepest involved in the rebellion, and that there is a vein to mine there of the early days of the rebellion that seemed like kind of shocking that it's taken till now to really dig into that, since Disney has now been doing the Star Wars thing for 10 years basically since they bought it.
Yeah. I guess we're already in on Andor. That is a really potent, interesting era in Star Wars to explore if they can avoid like a lot of prequel kind of trapping stuff, and they seem to have found an avenue where they can quite easily. And
So far.
yeah, and Rogue One, of course, is I think I don't know if we've explicitly discussed Rogue One on this podcast, but it's definitely come up that it is both of our favorite Disney Star Wars thing.
Oh yes.
I think, and I'm very down with getting back into the not just that world, but that kind of operating position for Star Wars. The sort of a little more serious, a little less goofy, written more for adults, and tackling kind of more down to earth characters that are not quite so comic booky, space wizardy,
Right.
goofy alien-y. These are realistic kind of people, and speak like real people, at least relative to other Star Wars properties.
Yeah, I mean, it's Andor is written by and showrun by a guy who wrote like Jason Bourne movies before, and you
And
can
Michael
certainly
Clayton, yeah.
feel some of that, bringing a little more of an adult sensibility to this and a groundedness to the espionage angle, which it's a ripe angle to do with Star Wars. That's always been like in the DNA somewhere. It's just Disney has really flogged like you said, the space wizard stuff.
hmm
And
Yeah,
it's really
which
going.
makes sense. It's a kids franchise. Kids like space wizards. Kids are probably more into space wizards than they are realpolitik on Coruscant over, like Senator Mon Mothma is upset because she has to have dinner with extremists. That's not a good hook for a kid's version of Star Wars, but it's a good one for
No,
me.
but
It's
yeah, that's Star Wars is a kids franchise. Yes, like that's always going to be part of it. But my contention is the reason why it was worth spending $4 billion to acquire this intellectual property is that it's expansive enough that you can do various different things with it. That it
yeah,
can be a kids franchise and like a Men on a Mission, World War II espionage movie, and you could do a pirate movie, and it's a western when it wants to be, and it's a it's Lone Wolf and Cub when they wanted to be over on the Mandalorian. And Star Wars, the universe of Star Wars fits all these different things very, very well. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think that this needs to be as exclusive with the kiddie stuff as it might seem to be.
It's not going to turn into the Parallax View or anything. It's going to continue to be something that's on Disney Plus and kids are going to watch. So,
Mhm.
there'll be funny droids. In fact, I'm surprised there's not more funny droids already. But
There's been one sort of.
yeah, But I'm sure the one from Rogue One will show up pretty soon. I don't recall his name, but he was
Oh,
good.
sure.
And yeah,
K2SO. Yeah.
K2SO. Yeah, he'll be around, and
Old Alan Tudyk.
yeah, and stuff like that will continue to work its way in because the world is built for that, to fit in organically. But I like the restraint so much so far to do stories about like foster families and um, the inner office bureaucracy of the Empire. God, I love all that stuff.
This is my favorite part of it so far is the villain character of the just over ambitious corporate security officer that
He's great.
overreaches and accidentally gets an entire sector annexed by the Empire, and how he's just like it's a villain type that we is less common to see generally, and we have definitely never seen in Star Wars before.
Mm-hmm.
That he fails straight out of the gate.
Yeah.
Spectacularly. And I don't know where he's going from here. Like it's really it's fun. Like my gripe a lot of the time with the Disney Star Wars stuff too is that I take one look at a character when they're introduced and I just kind of know what their arc is going to be generally.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh well, I don't know. Like Boba Fett's clearly going to befriend that Wookiee. Like they're not going to keep him bad.
Mm-hmm.
That the arc always does tend to be the exact same one, where like fully 50% of the episodes of The Mandalorian are he meets a new potential antagonist and they become friends by the end of the episode. That's probably 2/3 of those episodes, really, but
Yeah.
it started feeling very rote there before it became all of Boba Fett, and then Obi-Wan just like, oh, there's one of the bad guys who is an attractive young woman and not a freakish evil-looking alien. I wonder if she will have a change of heart at some point here. And I don't know what the Imperious security guy, Karn, I think his name is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where he's heading. He might become disillusioned with the Empire because they fired him and didn't appreciate his work, and he might end up joining the rebellion. And that would technically be, make friends with the potential villain arc again. But it feels like it would be a more interesting iteration of it in this case because he's coming at it from not so much like, or I don't know, like it's not a straightforward awakening his conscience thing. It's just that he's the Empire in a way was not officious enough for him.
I don't know. That's not my instinct though. I think he's going to be like a Javert figure. I think he's going to be.
I'm down with that.
Yeah, obsessed with chasing Andor or something like that. But the point being, it could go either way or a different way. Like the character is kind of, we don't know what he's going to be, and that's kind of true of everyone. I don't know what Stellan Skarsgård is going to end up being in this. Mm-hmm. He's great. I'm not sure if he's even a good guy. I think he is, but he could not be. He could be the seasoned villain. And
yeah, Stellan Skarsgård can pull that off, as we know.
Yeah.
But if he's not going to pull the villain card, they've got plenty of Game of Thrones alumni lying around that can pick up that slack. I don't remember why we talked about this, but I remember talking with you about just the game of like any British TV series over the last 5 years is just, all right, which incidental Game of Thrones actors are going to pop up here? And with Andor, we've got Qyburn, the Macer that
Big
helps Cersei.
Yes,
he's great in his one episode so far. And we also had our boy Jan Royce.
Yes, absolutely had bronze Jan Royce.
And it was really bothering me who like Stellan Skarsgård's lady, that he connects Andor to was like, why does she seem so familiar? What do I know her from? And she's the faceless assassin that chased Arya around.
It's the waif. It's the waif. Yeah.
everybody's favorite Game of Thrones character is the waif and bronze Jan Royce
and Qyburn. I mean, that's hilarious to me that those guys pop for me, and I'm just like, oh my god, look at all those Game of Thronesers. Those are like, I don't know if any of those make the top 100 on the Game of Thrones character.
God no. The other one that was like really recognizable British character actor that I see sometimes. It always takes me a while to place her, though. Is she's plays like Harry Potter's neighbor in one of
Oh,
those movies.
Fiona Shaw, or
No, no, no.
because she's Harry Potter's stepmother. Yes.
Oh, she is. That's what I know her from. Okay, it's Game of Thrones and Harry Potter. That's where all the British character actors come from. So far, it's 3-2 Game of Thrones alumni from by my count. But I could be missing a Potter
We
alum.
That might be fun to keep an open tally of that as we go on.
Just this very like recognizable face.
Yes, I know who you're talking about now.
And
Yeah.
Harry Potter gets attacked by Dementors at the opening of one of the movies, and she pops up and like is a friendly face. She has to testify at his little tribunal. I don't know her name, but it's just such a recognizable face that I see her. I'm always like pointing at the screen like Leonardo DiCaprio, like her. I know her. Anyway.
There's probably guys who are in both of those shows that I haven't even noticed. Probably in Andor at this point.
I'm loving the sort of like Toady, the second fiddle guy to the corporate security goon. The heavy-set Scottish guy.
Yeah.
This
popping. Yes.
Yeah, Andor is wonderfully Scottish so far. Which is just good. I don't know that Star Wars needs to be explicitly Scottish, but it's good to have a regionality and a specificity that exists outside of the volume.
You definitely always want your Imperials to be somewhere from the UK. Irish is good too. Welshman, get some Welshmen in there. That's fine.
I mean, look, Star Wars has to expand eventually. I'm willing to accept some Scandinavians in there at this point,
well, they're natural fits.
Right.
They kind of have that Aryan kind of thing. But yeah, like I guess one of the biggest surprises for me on this show is how little alien stuff there is. So far, this is just people. Like there are some in the background.
Yeah, I guess it's not alien stuff, but I do like the sort of cultural stuff on that first planet we were on. The whole like ringing of the giant hammer bells, and that they use as system. Just,
I mean, I guess I misspoke in that I guess they are all aliens in a sense. But yes, that is the thing. Like it's kind of like interested in societies and cultures and alien worlds and creating that stuff up, but it's not leaning into that. It seems to be based on recognizable stuff and pulling from some Scottishness, but the guy hitting the anvil in the morning on the tower, or I don't know, or even just the Blade Runner architecture in that first planet where the brothel district that he opens the series in. Oh, that was an incredible scene, actually. The first 15 minutes of the first episode.
Yeah, we're in a brothel. That was new territory for Star Wars.
Yeah.
Another like that guy British character actor type thing where I was like, what do I know this guy from? I realized the guy that harasses him in the brothel. He played Timon the Jew in the HBO Rome series.
Oh wow, I recognized him too. I didn't catch that he was Timon. Okay, that's cool.
It bothered me for like that entire segment until I finally like placed it. I watched that series recently. Anyway. Well, one thing I like about the world building in Andor, it embraces something great about the expansiveness of the Star Wars universe, in that it's willing to establish these like different cultures specific to planets, but they're still like human planets. It's not falling into the sort of like the what a smaller mind approaches sci-fi world building. It does the thing of, well, you know what, we have these different alien races introduced in Star Wars, right? And we first met Twi'leks when they were Jabba's like slave dancers. So now the backstory we're creating here is that the Twi'lek culture is all built around dancing, and that's like everybody is going to be, and all Wookiees are basically Chewbacca. They're like these honorable things, and their culture is all built around life debts that he owes to Han Solo, and that's what, so they're all sidekicks. And it's just, and the Hutts are all crime bosses. This entire species of nothing but crime bosses, which it's
reductive and childish.
You understand exactly how it happens, but it's so limited. And I like the expansiveness of, we have a completely different human civilization on this planet, Ferrix, that's not fully annexed to the Empire, versus we go to Coruscant, and it's a totally different culture that's still, built around humans, not around Quarren or whatever the Bith, which I think is a whole species of jazz playing egg-headed aliens.
Of course, yes, that is part of their society. But this is, I think, maybe the first Star Wars thing I've seen where a planet has more than one biome.
Yeah,
Like there's different areas to the
yeah.
places they are.
That's just the geological version of the cultural thing I was complaining about. That
Yeah.
everything it's a snow planet or a desert planet, and it's like no, this is a planet that has snow and desert in different
Hmm.
places.
Yeah, they're going from the city into the country now, stuff like that.
Yeah,
It's that's cool. That's mature. That's giving consideration to the world beyond you know, I don't know what the Wikipedia says about I don't know. I don't even remember which planet they've been on so far. It's a few. Uh
one of them is called Ferrix,
yeah,
and
Ferrex.
Mon Mothma is on Coruscant. I know that.
Hmm.
But yeah, just Ferrix has different terrain in different places. And that's
Hmm.
that enough. That alone is fine.
Uh
Is good.
the street fight in episode 3,
Good
sort of
stuff.
good stuff, low level, it's a scrap that gets out of hand kind of thing.
Mhm.
Sort of has a kind of like an LA police drama kind of vibe to it, like sort of gang fights kind of energy,
Yeah, well,
which is
the
cool.
the
But
bad guys don't have the
Mhm.
entire empire coming down on them either. They've got
Exactly.
12, and so it's like 12 on 2, which is not a fair fight, but it's kind of small scale. And
But I was struck that it's not dissimilar from the big fight at the end of the Boba Fett show. Just like it physically, like what they're showing us, it's taking place in alleyways and streets, and that of course is a terrible sequence, and it is
yeah,
pitched at an epic level. But even this small level version of it far surpasses it with characters that we barely met, but still know better than the characters in Boba Fett.
well, and those characters we barely met are like thinking and trying things
Yeah,
more than, and that you're right, that the Boba Fett one is all focused on let's just bring together all the friends we made along the way and give them all a little highlight moment. But it is like bad video game level design where of just the
yeah,
enemies are they're these it's like an 8-bit Nintendo game. They come slowly, they've got a one shot gun it's their only attack, and they come in like predictable patterns that our good guys can run circles around them and do little highlights on them. And whereas with Andor, it's a small scale thing, but the people are both like trying to outwit the other side, and not
yeah,
doing not the most clever things ever, but reasonably surprising things in the moment.
yeah. And it's also maybe the best compliment I can give it is that it doesn't feel like it's a video game sequence. Like it feels
Yeah.
like something you would see in a film, but like in the beginning of a film. And I mean, yeah, this is all still technically kind of in the table setting place for this show. I think it's 12 episodes. We've seen 4 at this point, and that's I can only imagine where it goes from here.
Yeah. So, okay, here's the thing, though,
Mm.
and this connects Andor more to the other two series we're talking about here. That all of these are technically prequel series.
Yeah,
Andor sort of most constrained by that, in that it is, uh, it's named after one character. It is
that we've
clearly
seen
like
die. Yes.
we're complimenting how like sort of expansive it is right away, but
Hmm.
it is clearly going to revolve around this one guy, and we know exactly where his story goes. Not too long from now,
No, he's got 5 years at most until he gets to that
right?
point. Yeah.
And it has to end with him joining the rebellion. But I would say that all of these, shows, all three of these shows, I'm enjoying them to various degrees.
Hmm.
But I'm also feeling slightly frustrated by all of them because they all feel like we're still doing like prologue to the real stories here, and not just because they're not even because they're prequels. It feels like we're still like getting to the point of we haven't reached the point of what these series are actually going to be about themselves, like what these stories are going to be. And Andor
Yeah.
released 3 episodes to start with, and it feels like this in a movie version, this would have been like the first 10 minutes of a movie. I mean, the episodes seem to end sort of arbitrarily. Like, okay, that's enough runtime. Not really that we hit a really strong cliffhanger.
I saw a very interesting theory online, which is that this was probably intended to be 4 long episodes, like 4 90-minute, 75 to 90-minute episodes that they just sort of arbitrarily cut into 3 pieces and made 12.
That would have been I mean, that's an odd theory, just because that's not a structure that Disney has ever employed before.
Yes, but
Or,
I could see if you put all 3 together, it would feel like one long episode. And the 4th episode definitely feels like it ends just as arbitrarily. And it feels like
yes,
there
but
is, in fact, a big plot movement that is going to happen over the next 2 episodes.
well, the 3rd episode at least has the most logical ending point of
Yes.
they leave the planet, and so they're heading to a new thing. And now, episode 4, we're starting with expositing. Okay, here's the heist we're gonna do, and it's like, oh, okay, so here's the show finally starting. We're gonna do the heist. That's what the Andor show is gonna be about, and the first 3 episodes were just establishing who Andor is and who the different players are. Really, I mean, if anything, it's got an arc for that villain character, but not so much. Andor himself just kind of bums around and tries to make money and doesn't, and then decides to leave. He's just
yeah. Well, he decides to leave, and his relationship with Fiona Shaw is, that has a sort of beginning, middle, end arc wise. With the way the flashbacks are structured, it's. I mean, I'm sure we'll see her again, but within
I think we're
the
not
context
done
of a story chunk that kind of had a completion to it. As
well,
you
I
would
don't
see
know.
in an
I mean,
episode
I
of
still think
television.
of that as very much in progress, because I assume we're going to find out that the girl who's eyeing him in the rebel camp there that he just met up with is the sister he's been looking for. And that,
Maybe, yeah, okay.
as I think, and I assume that's like how Stellan Skarsgård got so much personal information about him. Would be
That makes sense, actually. I think if this does come to pass, I think it'll be pretty obvious that
Yeah.
like if the next episode ends arbitrarily, and then the 6th episode like completes the heist arc, and a bunch of those guys die, and they're off onto a new thing, then it'll be like, okay, that's what happened. Which
I mean, I wonder if
fine.
it was originally pitched as a movie or as a pair of movies or a trilogy of movies, even, and that then. I mean, I guess that's not that far off from what you're saying, like 4 90-minute batches or something. But I've had some frustration with all these series, feeling like the generous interpretation would be that they are confident and unhurried about getting to the fireworks factory quickly, and the ungenerous reading would just be that they have pacing issues. That they're dawdling too much in the early stages, where we don't necessarily need all of this stuff. So when we get into House of the Dragon, for example, that is the one of these that I am the most into. I think just because currently, I'm my interest in that world is higher than the other ones that I have a longer history with, the Lord of the Rings world or the Star Wars world. But Disney Plus has really drained my interest in the Star Wars world considerably. So Andor's having to build back up from that. And I guess the Hobbit movies did a little bit of that too with Lord of the Rings, but also just not having. I don't have a long history with Amazon Prime as a studio that I like have faith in, the way that I have more faith in HBO. To not to bat 1,000, but to put the resources behind it and the intentionality, and to keep the HBO's got a pretty good record of letting the creatives do their thing, at least until the money runs out.
That's true. They know how to make Game of Thrones, at this point.
Certainly.
For the most part. I do not know that Amazon knows how to make Lord of the Rings, even now.
That's true.
Yeah.
Again, the money's on the screen, so I know they know how to finance Lord of the Rings.
Yes. The behind-the-scenes craftsmen and technicians, they are doing a fantastic job there. No question about it. But I will get to Lord of the Rings. I do want to talk about House of the Dragon first. I think it is the most conventionally successful of these 3 so far. Although I think Andor, as it's just getting started, could take it over.
I'm sort of interested in the word choice of conventionally successful there, because it seems to me that it's operating in a different set of conventions than the other 2.
Well, I mean, they are both, as you said, gigantic world building setup kind of seasons of shows that all seem to be running probably like 4 seasons each, something like that, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Lord of the Rings, I think, is announced for 5 already. That they just
4 to 5, Mm-hmm.
Wrote all the checks for 5.
Yeah.
Is what I had heard.
Okay. Okay. I guess we're in for it then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do feel like this one, like House of the Dragon. I mean, when I say conventional, I mean like it has character arcs that are working and paying off in ways that we understand. You know, it's doing Game of Thrones things. They built the Game of Thrones machine, and it works now. You know, they know how to do this.
If it's
Yeah.
splitting hairs, it's just that a big part of what defines Game of Thrones
Mhm.
is that the way it spins against fantasy convention, that
When it
Lord of the
started,
Rings
yeah,
and
but now,
Star Wars operate more directly within that, you know, tradition, like pre Game of Thrones convention of there are good guys and bad guys, and the arc is that the good guys will find a way to beat the bad guys. And yeah.
conventional may be the wrong word, but it is familiar.
Mhm.
It is. I know what Game of Thrones is now. You know, I know
Right.
what they do, and that's
But
what they're
it's more
doing.
prestige TV convention, I guess. You know, that
That's true.
almost anti-hero
That's true.
prestige TV than traditional high fantasy
Hmm.
conventions.
Yeah. Uh, it's doing that, and I think because it has the playbook most defined for their goals. You know, like this is we're doing King's Landing intrigue stuff. That's what this show is about. They know how to hit that mark pretty well, and they have. I haven't read Blood and Fire, but it definitely seems like they have the material to just do that, and it's going to work fine.
They certainly do. And having read the material is part of what makes me. I think it. I don't know if it lessens and heightens my frustration with it. I guess
Mm.
because I am really excited about like where this story is going. I think there's a lot of great material there, and I'm like 7 episodes in. I'm still like look. It's still the show I'm looking forward to every week, and I have been entertained by all of them. But I'm also like, do we really need to start 15 years before this story really starts? And it's leading to these pacing issues that I think are making it harder to like actually. It seems on paper like we're starting so far back and seeing the seeds of a lot of stuff planted, and we should be getting like all this extra time that should be like tying us more tightly to these characters. But because we're doing these massive time jumps constantly, we're just sort of like skipping a stone across the top of 15 years worth of events,
Very much.
and we keep having to recast people, and every episode has to sort of reestablish the same characters and the same conflicts repeatedly.
I think we're doing another time jump before the next episode. I think the kids are older
Yeah,
next time. Yeah.
which is fine with me because I think
Mhm.
that the two blonde-haired kids kind of those actors kind of suck so far. I was like, I'm glad stuff's happening here, but are we really gonna be stuck with these kids forever? I mean, part of this is like just shitting on these young actors, but like part of it's one of my big worries about doing this story is that it is awkward to base an entire show around the Targaryens. You know, like Daenerys was a big part of the original, but everybody's got to wear these horrible, crappy wigs, and they're like, even the good guys and the bad guys are both like, yeah, but they still want to fuck their sisters. they're like, they're fucking
I'm
weirdos,
definitely
man.
feeling that, man. I am. I'm very struck. Like they are kind of. They're doing their thing. They're doing the King's Landing intrigue
Mhm.
very well. You know, a lot of these characters I feel like are sort of versions of characters we've seen in Game of Thrones before. There is, I'm like, oh, okay, they're doing a Renly Baratheon here, like stuff like that.
Mm.
I can kind of recognize, I guess when you do 100 characters plus that I recognize in the original run of that show, as I was saying
Yeah, you're
before.
going to be able to make some
Yeah,
connections there.
exactly.
There's not a lot. Yeah, you're not going to
Mhm.
get a whole lot of just entirely new cloth creations. But I think what is notable, what a lot of people have been noting, is that the lack of an Arya character or a
Yeah.
Jon Snow character, and like the ones where we're sort of like starting out here in Game of Thrones, season 3 or 4 territory, where they've muddied up the waters of like no pure good guys and very few like outright monstrous villains.
Yeah, and I like that, and I like the commitment to it. I like that they're just doing it. That they're not softening anyone. I don't get the sense. This is a story about a family that is locked in this fucking power battle death grip thing where there's no escape for any of them really, and they just have
Yeah.
to play this out, or they could get killed. And they they've spent their lives living in that has produced who they are, which is, fairly unlovely people most of the time. I think the thing I am missing is that Game of Thrones had such a wide swath of characters and locations and places, and it was nice to cut to the wall and see how
Mm-hmm.
how the infantry up there is that can't have sex ever again, and just lives in the frigid cold all year, how they're dealing with stuff, and then we cut down to whatever's going on in the River Run or Sunspear or across the Narrow Sea. There's a bunch of different places that we can go and different types of people we can see, and here we are locked in with
So you're
the
saying is you're looking forward to getting back to the Stepstones, huh?
well, I mean, even the Stepstones, though, it was, well, what are the Targaryens up to in the Stepstones? Conquest, great. Like I'm missing the small folk a little. I'm missing the people who feel differently about the world and have different goals, because everyone kind of has the same basic goals here.
I agree. This does. On the one hand, like it's clear that they have the resources and the know-how and the willingness to like go just as big with the action as later seasons of Game of Thrones did.
Yes.
But they don't have a story reason to really do a giant battle yet. So they kind of cooked one up in the Stepstones there.
Yeah.
Even though it's paper cardboard cutouts on the other side of the battle from the one like guy we know who's there.
The crab feeder. Yeah.
Yeah.
How weird can we make him look so we can?
I mean, good design on that guy. I liked it, but he's not a real character, and we're still treading some water and building up to the point where the characters we actually know start fighting with each other.
Yeah, I mean, it all feels like holding pattern until Paddy Considine leaves the show. It's kind of where we're at. It feels like. No, I don't know. I have not read the story. I don't know exactly how that goes. He seems pretty doomed, but
I'm not going to give specific spoilers. But yeah, okay, Viserys is not super long for this world.
No, I mean, they're making him look like Mr. Burns already. So, and we're about to time jump again.
I was thinking that Mr. Burns is generous. I was thinking Dan Aykroyd, Nothing But Trouble. They really went all out the last one with him. Yeah. He actually looked weirdly in episode 7. He looked better than he did in episode 6. I don't know what happened, but
yeah, there was a moment in episode 6 where I was just like, "Oh, ew, oh god," yeah. And I get that he's sickly. I get that that's sort of one of the things they've overestablished it, if anything. Like in episode 5, 10 years before, and he was like, coughing up blood and falling over and stuff. It's like, oh, is it happening now? Is he going to be gone? Nope.
Just how many more limbs are going to be missing next week? No, I mean,
I like him very much, though. Like he's probably one of the standout performances for me still. Like I'm going to miss him when he's gone. He's also the only one who's chill. So that helps.
That is true. That's what they need. They're going to need some more likable characters. I don't know who that is exactly. Again, I've mentioned to you before, the nature of the source material is such that you don't get a strong sense of like who's actually like a good dude or a nice lady based on what they do, because everybody has their reasons for doing what they do, and when there's a war going on, people are trying to win the war, and I mean, if you read that style of account of the original Game of Thrones series, you would probably not think that Tyrion was as sympathetic of a figure as the original Game of Thrones series makes him out to be. To that point, like I read the whole source material, didn't know if Larys Strong, the guy with a cane and limp, was going to be a villain or more of a Tyrion type. And man, they answered that question quickly and thoroughly, but in a way that I think like demonstrates the problems of this pacing here, because he's got he does this incredibly evil masterstroke of scheming. It's this assassination plot where he kills like his own father and brother to ascend to the lordship of their lands, and to also sort of implicate the queen and make her his patron. And that's all great, except that like it's the second scene we've really had with him by the time that happens, and it's not like we had more time with Littlefinger, like kind of getting a feel for him before he really showed his true colors and did his first big like betrayal. And he betrayed somebody we care about too. Like this is a big move, like politically within Westeros, but in terms of the show, he's not betraying anybody that we like have a relationship with, and we also don't know him very well. So we're kind of surprised on a plot level, but not like taken aback by this turn for that character that I did not have a grasp on anyway.
Yes, that did strike me as moving fast. But I don't know. That's a character. I there's a lot of potential there. You know, that could be, that remains to be seen how they're going to handle that. And if he's not just little fingering it up the whole time, you know.
No, I mean he's got to be at this point. I don't think he can really backpedal from where we started.
But there's a Shakespearean villain that he reminds me of, Edmund in King Lear, that has very similar circumstance and actions, and that character is one of the best Shakespeare villains. So I'm hoping that they're leaning on that rather than just Baelish, you know, and I think they are. I mean, at least it seems like they're at least aware of that. You know, that there's potential there for who this guy is and their resentments and all that. The actor is playing it a little evil, to be fair, but so is everyone, kind of. You know, everyone's got a hard edge on this show. Even the characters
and I mean,
they want us to like Rhaenyra, are holding on to that edge.
I see. I can't get a feel on. Do they really want me to like Rhaenyra? I feel like the show does want me to be more on Rhaenyra's side than Alicent's side so far. Except I'm not sure that I am.
Well, I love Alicent.
I was kind of liked Alicent right from the start.
Yeah, I think the Alicent actress is a standout, the new one.
Yeah.
Of the kids, I think the Rhaenyra kid was very good, and I'm sorry to lose her.
Yes, there's been that shift there. But I don't know. I feel like they're both sort of in the same like pickle, which is that they see that they're on this collision course. They're locked into this because they represent competing, claims for the succession of the crown, and they both kind of feel like the other one will be forced to kill their children if they win. So
yeah, they've been told that by these these officious men multiple times at this point. They'll have to kill your kid if she ascends. They'll have to.
Right.
It's the only way they can be safe. So,
and I kind of buy. Yeah. I mean, I kind of buy that, but also I guess I feel like there was more room for Rhaenyra to try and like de-escalate those tensions than for Alicent to.
Oh well, she's very impulsive. Yes,
yeah, and she never tried. So maybe that puts me a little more on Team Green so far. But I mean, look, again, with no specifics whatsoever, it's not going to be super easy to just stay on one team this entire time, like, and feel great about it.
That's fun. I mean, that's sort of the buy-in for this show. Like, I've actually been talking with like a lot of people I know about these. I feel like these shows people are watching them and having opinions on them all, and it's going to be. I think the key to whether you like House of the Dragon or not is whether you can hang with all these assholes or not. And if you can, they're doing a pretty good job of it. But if you can't, well, I understand, like.
But see, for me, I think the pacing issue is just as much as that like sympathy issue, because I think you will see a lot more people coming around next season, just because the way the story is going to move forward, they're not going to be doing big time jumps.
Right
between episodes next season. There's just it's the chain of events is going to get a lot more concentrated, and so I think that will be, I guess, a more comfortable storytelling groove for people to follow, like from one episode leads directly into the next one, the way that old school Game of Thrones did, as opposed to this thing where we keep stopping and starting and jumping across years between episodes. And I think it is. You can't entirely separate them, really, but it compounds the sympathy issue, the way that this season we seem to be moving very slow and very fast at the same time.
Yeah, that is odd. But yeah, I get what you mean. I think you're right. Maybe it's just the contrast with Rings of Power that's making me not mind the pacing of this one so much. But there's definitely good long chunks of this where I'm kind of just like, okay, we're going to continue to talk about Succession. I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's such a major part of this story is just the tale of succession, and who have you advanced yourself by marrying your child to this week? You know,
Mhm.
that I do kind of yearn for what you're talking about, and what I suspect is very much going to be the bulk of this series.
Yeah, and
The
just getting to the point
wars
like
and the maneuverings. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
and that
it's still
stuff is going to
maneuvering.
be a lot of fun, I promise. But
Yeah.
the also getting to the point where there's plenty of people dying in these episodes, but just getting to a point where the major death of an episode is not somebody that we were like basically introduced to that episode, like
It's
either
happening. Yeah. Harwin Strong.
entirely
Sure.
or
Yeah.
because it's a recast actor that is now like Damon's wife. That oh
Yeah.
we saw you as a 12-year-old a couple of times, but now we're getting some characterization with you as an adult, and bye. Okay, off
Right.
you go, I guess. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not that I have a super deep attachment to that particular character, but it just feels like with Lara Strong's family too. It's like, oh, okay, we got about half an episode of characterization for you before you were shockingly murdered. But and it just, what the original Game of Thrones did so well was uh, establish those dozens of characters all at once, and then it just almost right through the end felt like it never ran out of people it could shockingly kill because you're like, oh, that person.
There were so many. Yeah.
Yeah,
OSHA. They're killing OSHA this week. Oh no. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, the thing is, like, I do think that part of this is just that all these shows dropped at once.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a lot of names and characters and relationships to keep track of for me, and I don't
Oh
think
yeah.
I did an incredibly good job, I think, of keeping track of everyone on Game of Thrones and how their relationships to other people that they never even share a scene with, work and drive them, and determine what their characters are doing. I'm having a much harder time in this and Rings and Andor to some extent, just
Yeah.
keeping track of all the fantasy names and all the different variations on Aemond, Aegwin, Aegar,
Well,
Aegwon. Like
that's what I was about to say
it's
because the whole Targaryen thing and how they're all these albino freaks it plays into that because on top of that they're also all named Aegon and Aemond and Baelor and Bela and Balon and
Mhm.
there's
Rhaena
too
and
many.
Rhaenyra and Lyanna and
Yeah,
Lyanna and
there's a
yeah, and
Rhaenys
there
and a Rhaenyra and
and
a Rhaena
and then
are
the
all
actor
three different
changes
ones.
every 2 episodes
Yeah,
too. It's a little frustrating in that regard. And I
it was
I, I kind of just have to roll with it.
it
I
was
kind of
easier to make fun of, but also kind of nice in Game of Thrones original that they would amidst all of the Tyrians and I don't know, Maester Pycelles, like they'd occasionally throw you like and this is Rob and Kevin. Uh, you know, we're not getting any of that here. Um, and you're right, Rings of Power is the same way that with the Elvish names and the
yeah.
Numenorian names
Hmm.
that
No,
you got
these
to
are
like
different kind of
roll the
people.
R's.
They
Yeah.
feel like God. Yeah.
HBO like really, I think that it doesn't have the feature that I've come to appreciate on Amazon and Disney Plus, where you can sort of
Yes.
like
Yeah.
scroll up and it gives you the cast list of
Yes.
like
Me
a
too.
picture and the actor's name of who's been in that scene you were watching. Um, but that's just good for checking Elvish names.
Hmm. I turned on the subtitles just so I could see like the name of the characters written out
Yeah,
for House
me
of the
too.
Dragon, just so I could see like, okay, Aemond, got it.
Oh, I do that
Yeah.
in Lord of the Rings too, because sometimes I just don't know, especially when you got kids in the house and you
Yes.
can't just blast the volume entirely.
Hmm.
People are giving speeches, and I'd be like, okay, did I just misunderstand like what that person was saying? Were they using some sort of like British colloquialism that I'm not as familiar with, or was he just listing off the names of a couple of fictional like realms of Middle Earth? That I'm like, oh no, that's just Elvish nonsense that you said from Eredun to Akfilian. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. That didn't actually matter. I wasn't just bumping on somebody's accent or something.
Right. Hmm.
But okay, so switching over to Lord of the Rings here.
Yeah.
That's one too where it got better in this most recent episode, where they finally kind of converged the Southlands story with the
Hmm.
Galadriel and the Numenor stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. That's funny because I've seen 5 of 6. I have not gotten to the most recent one.
oh,
I've been busy, and frankly, I just don't have urgency with this goddamn show.
man,
Is
it's a
part of it.
big big battle and really well staged battle.
Yeah, I'll
And
watch it tonight probably. But And yeah,
Uh,
that's good to hear. I mean, the thing you can say about Rings of Power is that it looks amazing. Like they spent on it.
Absolutely.
It's a gorgeous show. They knew that well, I don't know if they needed to do this, but they clearly wanted it to feel of a piece with the scale and scope of Jackson and
Mhm.
the Lord of the Rings films. And I know it's not technically connected to those, but they want it to feel like that as much as
I mean,
possible.
they're really riding that line if it's
They
not,
sure are.
because they are cribbing the design elements very directly in a way that I think is
Hmm.
actually a benefit to the show. I'm not like wagging my finger at them. I mean, I guess legally speaking, if they're not supposed to use that, they probably should be steering a little farther clear of it. But
Hmm.
I think it's a benefit to the viewing experience to have it be, it's 3,000 years before the movies would have taken place, so it's okay if there are some variations on these designs. But I like how it looks of a piece. But this one, especially with the stuff in Numenor and then the Elrond stuff as well, it also feel like, okay, I've been watching 5 to 6 hours of this now, and we're still in prologue. It's
Yeah,
again, it's not because they're setting up stuff that's going to happen in the movies 3,000 years down the line. It's just like I can tell that the story of this TV series has not really started yet, at least in these plot lines. And
very much, very much. The only reason I even like have any guideline or idea where we're headed and what this show is about is that Isildur's in it. Like that's all I
yeah,
got. I mean, those most of these characters live thousands of years, so it could be anywhere. As far as I mean, maybe a Tolkien scholar would know exactly where we are and what's about to happen. But from what I understand, they don't have access to a lot of the Silmarillion stories anyway. So like it kind of is all a bit of make 'em up. I'm guessing we're doing the battle with Sauron that opens the Lord of the Rings. That's where we're headed because it's when Isildur is alive. And
right. But is
yeah,
that going to be the end of season 5 when
I would assume.
that's
I,
yeah?
I,
I
I
mean
assume that's what
that's
we're
yeah,
building. Yeah. Uh,
that's what I would think. But
uh-huh.
but I
And
also did not. There's some stuff that happens in the most recent episode that I actually haven't seen that I did
uh,
not expect. So
okay.
um, I mean, I guess it's not that far out of the realm. It's just sort of
You
how
can
it played
spoil it
out.
for me. You can spoil it for me because that's the thing. I'm not engaged yet. I am not. I don't. I'm not
It
really.
just
Yeah.
what sort of Adar the leader of the orcs, like what his overall plan, like design
Hmm.
was aiming towards.
All right. Well,
It's
it's
not.
more than nothing would be something at this point because
Yes.
that's all I've had so far. Is like he's leading the orcs. That's
Yeah. But that guy, he's the highlight of the show for me. That
oh,
I think is the
really.
most
I mean,
successful thing.
he's
Oh,
striking. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's the most successful. It's 'cause it's an invention of the show.
Hmm.
Thing when he showed up, I did not know. Oh, who's this character? Where's this character going? Um, and I think the actor's really well done, and that just like props to like the makeup
Yeah.
team too. That's
He
all
looks
on
like
point.
a Dragon Age character to me.
Yes, he does. But it was kind of cool to see a Dragon Age character show up in Lord of the Rings. I felt like I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's here. This is an identity for this show that is sort of distinct from the Hobbit movies, or that is
Hmm.
here's something that this show can hang its hat on as their creation that is actually interesting. Because otherwise, like, the set design of Numenor is great, but
Hmm.
those characters in that plot line over there was dragging for me.
Yeah.
I,
I mean, hopefully that guy is more than just like, well, this show's version of Aragorn. Uh, the king who's kind of
well,
roaming around
this,
as a
yeah, I mean,
as a
they clearly
bard.
made
Yeah.
him look as much like Vigo as legally or humanly possible,
Yeah. Hmm.
without reconstructive surgery, which they might well have done. I would but man, like the hairstyle and the like, I
The
mean,
stuff, the beard length.
yeah, the
Yeah.
beard stubble. They clearly like had a picture like taped to it up into the makeup trailer to be consulting. But that, I mean, I think the speculation there is that he's heading for becoming a Nazgul, and that would be quite a different,
Oh, that's cool.
turn
Okay,
from Aragorn. But yeah,
that's
they're
kind of
clearly
cool.
like playing off of that.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, speaking of Dragon Age, I mean, as we've been talking about BioWare games, we keep saying like, why aren't these adapted? Why it's such an obvious thing, And part of that is that narratives are well suited for long form storytelling, but this strikes me as in some ways the closest I've seen to a BioWare style game being adapted.
yes,
Even as it's
for
not,
sure.
but it has the feel of one and sometimes the look of one, as with Adar. But like, and sort of the panoply of characters and the storytelling opportunity there within these different places that we're visiting, it seems like that's what I want this show to be.
Dragon Age was like riffing on Lord of the Rings to begin with, and yeah, tonally and aesthetically, I can definitely see that. It's like with Adar and with Arondir the elf. Like, well, I guess if you haven't seen the most recent one, his battle armor looks like it was taken straight from a Dragon Age character.
But no, like the conversations that like Elrond is having with Durin or Gil-galad, you know, and they're like having these scenes together, you know, like, oh well, you gotta go meet with Gil-galad now and see what he's really after. All this feels like that, you know, that sort of setting that I almost feel like a little wheel's going to pop up and I can say like, you know, you have a positive or negative response to what Durin just did sometimes.
Yeah, you can tell the elf to kiss Bronwyn.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't know. It sounds like backhanded, but I think that's one of the good parts about the show because I like Dragon Age a lot. And
well, no, yeah, that's what I want. Yeah, I lean into that if they could. I mean, I don't know what that even is as a suggestion. Do it more like that video game I like.
Well, I think it is. You know, it's introducing, I guess, more nuanced, quote unquote, adult like politicking to Tolkien than you really get from the original books or movies, where it's pretty broad strokes. Like, these people don't want to help fight the orcs. These people want them to help fight the orcs, and let's get them together. And there's a little more going on in Numenor and how they're setting up the, not always super elegantly, but the resentment between human and elves.
Well, it feels like they're trying to do Game of Thrones stuff, honestly, in their Lord of the Rings, and that's, I guess you got to when you have
that's
a
the
show.
Dragon Age formula is
yeah, exactly
30% of Game of Thrones into Lord of the Rings.
Fair enough. So yeah, I mean that is what they got to do. I do think this show is being just destroyed by pacing problems, though. I mean, I'm not anti this show. It's I don't think it's very good though yet. I think they're having a real hard time wrangling all the things they're trying to do, and man, does it feel like it's just setting the table up for 5 episodes. Yeah,
less than the sum of its parts. For me, because
big time.
The Harfoot stuff is nice and kind of charming, but also clearly like
we're
disconnected from its own show. Yeah, it's a holding pattern.
I do like that a lot. They're some of my favorites, the Harfoots.
Yeah, that song was wonderfully like just very Tolkien touch, and what just great little mini sequence there.
Yeah, the sociological aspects of them feel like some of the best parts of the show. The you know, just like, you know, it's a caravan of hobbits, and they have their ways, and they deck out their little covered wagons to look like rocks or something, so that Bigfoot won't see them. I love all that. They're
not totally like romanticized the way that you know, Tolkien clearly was in love with the Hobbit lifestyle as an ideal. Even if he had a little bit of an eye for their like fussiness and like sort of you know, backwards ways, and to a very small degree, but he likes the idea of living in a hole in the ground and being left alone a lot. Yeah, but with the Harfoots, I do like that they have this sort of ethos that's built around like this nomadic lifestyle and no man left behind, except when they leave somebody behind, and then they really,
which happens a lot.
Yeah. But then they have to like go through a whole process of like excommunication, like, because when they break their rule, they have to like make a big deal out about it. Like, it's okay in these circumstances, and that feels not, maybe real is not quite the right word for this high fantasy nonsense, but interesting and weirdly believable.
Yeah, I like seeing that stuff. There was one thing they did. In some ways, this is one of the highlights of the show for me. They did a big ceremony. I don't know, episode 3, something like that. You know, a big bonfire, and they had an in memoriam sequence.
Yes, like an Oscar reel.
Yeah, they did that. And they did the I think you should leave thing. Yeah, I'm telling the just
the cause of death.
Yeah, you don't usually show the cause of death in memoriams.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Ofo Brandyfoot, pancaked by semi-truck trailer.
It's a wonderful I think you should leave sketch.
Yeah. thinking that was funny for weeks now. I've been looking for the meme. No one's made it yet.
Yeah, you just got to Photoshop Sam Richardson into the corner of that frame, I guess. But then with Elrond and Durin too. Like I think I've seen people citing that as like really loving that stuff, and oh man, that's dragging like hell for me. Like
Nothing's
the
happened.
design of Khazad-dûn is great, but also
Mhm.
like this whole subplot could have been an email so far. Like just Elrond meets with somebody, says, "Why don't you go to the mountain and see what's up
Mhm.
there?" He goes to the mountain, and they kind of play coy about, "What are you mining?" Well, we're not mining this new precious metal. I can tell you that much. Why don't I go back with
Mhm.
you to the forest, and I'll see what they're up to in the forest. So they go back in the mountain to the forest, and like, "What are you doing over there?" Well, no, I'm not mining a special metal. I'll tell you that much. And why? Why do you ask? Not because we want a special metal. I can tell you that much. And why don't you guys go back to the mountain now and just back and forth and back and forth, and doing nothing? Like, and
Yeah.
all it
Mhm.
is, there's a shiny metal that they're like, yeah. What else are they digging for down there? I don't
Mhm.
know. I
This
mean,
is
we
the
know there's
most
a Balrog that gets involved at some point, but
this is the most prequely stuff that the show is
yeah,
doing, and but the thing is, the problem is, yeah, they have nothing but that. They have no. There's, I mean, they're trying to do some sociology kind of stuff. Just get dwarf society, see what they're about. Show some dwarf women. Show what
hmm
they're about.
I liked
Uh,
that
yeah.
for one episode of that, and then the
uh,
back and forth started
the
getting to me.
the old dwarf table gag. They're doing that,
Yeah,
all this stuff, and that's it feels like treading water, because they don't actually have a plot until the Balrog shows up, and
yeah.
he's in the advertising material. So I assume in the last episode there's going to be a Balrog, um, and the one. Well, there's going to be the one from the movies because that one is known as Durin's Bane.
Oh,
When they
yeah,
dug
that's
too
right.
greedily and too deep for the mithril. But the thing is, they had mithril for like I thought decades. I don't know.
I thought that it
Like
seemed like in the movies, the implication was that they had woken up the Balrog like pretty recently because they were surprised to find that, you know,
mhm.
although it also appears that
He's a demon in the ancient
everybody's
world.
been dead down there for 1,000 years when there's like, the skeletons covered in spider webs and everything. But
Well, there's also the so what's going on is that's Khazad-dûm is and Dwarradelf are abandoned for centuries, and then Balin, one of
yeah,
the
it tries
dwarves
to
from the Hobbit, tries to reclaim it.
recolonize
And
it.
some of those corpses, I think the majority of the corpses they find in Lord of the Rings are the recent expedition to Moria that has failed.
Hmm.
But
Okay, yeah,
then
that's
then there's also much older skeletons down there too, which from the initial strike of the Balrog
yeah.
when they woke it up.
Okay.
Durin did because it's Durin's bane. So this
I actually
brings me
do
to the
like
thing.
that.
Like
That's the sort of layers of history that you get from Middle Earth because Tolkien is such a
hmm
fanatic for this stuff that and it's almost like what we're talking about with Andor, like having different types of human civilizations, and he's like this one location can have different layers of history over the course of thousands of years because Tolkien had that world
that's
building mind.
that's what you get for Tolkien. Yeah. And I have friends who are watching the show. I mentioned talking about this in real life sometimes, and the people that really seem to be responding to this show, both the people I know and the people I've seen online, the people who really like the Rings of Power are the ones that have a foundation of Tolkien background and knowledge.
Hmm.
People who've read the Silmarillion and really know Tolkien, and they are kind of getting off on all the little things that are cooked in here. It seems like the people who made this show know their Tolkien, and if they are breaking rules, they are doing it, you know, with the understanding that they're doing it.
I would, yeah. Of
It
all the criticisms I might lob at this show, like I would assume that they all know their Tolkien perfectly well.
yeah.
I can't say for sure. The Silmarillion defeated me even at the height of my geekdom. I couldn't get more than halfway through that one. Um,
But yeah, seeing characters like Durin and Gil-galad, and talking about people like Elendil, like I think that if you're the person who gets off on that, then you're probably having a blast with this show. Pacing
mm,
issues aside, if you know the deal with Numenor already, if you know all these things going in, I think that only helps you.
yeah.
Which
Well, even if you don't know the deal with Numenor, I do like that the prophetic dream flood sequence, like
yeah,
helped establish that was really cool. I enjoyed
yeah,
that and established that there's a reason why you don't remember hearing the name of this place in the movies
right.
thousands of years from now. Um, and but the stuff actually taking place on Numenor really drug.
Oh yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
partly because like the only I was to say the only actor that really like just I like the guy who plays Ellen Deal a lot, but
Mm-hmm.
none of the younger actors there are working for me. And I do think actually Morford Clark as Gladriel is doing some really good work, but having to overcome some pretty tough writing for that stretch there.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the writing.
It's just
uh,
it's such a weird thing. I mean, I I haven't seen a lot of people complaining about this, but it's like it bothered me a lot. It's just like I don't understand her attitude at all here because if I understand correctly, she's like desperate, uh, but also doesn't know what she's desperate about.
this is a problem. Yes.
And
She just kind of seems like she's just stirring shit up. Is kind of like.
yeah,
I mean, I think we all know where this is headed. That it's
that's
going to
the
be a ring war of some kind.
yeah. Well, and we
But
know metatextually, we
exactly,
know she's right about
exactly.
Sauron is eventually going to be a problem. But I don't feel like the
Yeah.
show has established that Sauron is even around or doing any of this stuff. Like
Uh-huh.
the show, people keep mistaking Adar for Sauron.
Mm-hmm.
So
Or
really,
the
she's kind
stranger,
of
or
wrong. Like
yeah.
all she's like trying to tell people these people like, hey, you got to like sail your army across the world and go fight this war that I swear is going on. Like, have there been any battles? No, not really. But I swear it's going on over there. It's going to be going on. You need to get a part of it. You need to go across the world to do it. It's very, very important reasons that uh, I can't articulate why it matters to Numenor. And
Mm-hmm.
I can't even articulate why she thinks that this is. I mean, I know that her brother died fighting Morgoth and Sauron, sort of.
Yeah.
But why exactly she is so sure he's alive? Why the show can't just show him to us?
I guess the thing in the ice
Indication
castle, the first episode, convinced her that it was coming back.
I didn't convince anybody else she was with.
No, no one else. Not the people she told about it. And
I just
you know,
why can't they show the audience some evil schemes cutaway? I don't know, like just indication to us that Gladriel is on the right track here, because while I know she kind of has to be, I don't see it from anything that has been on screen so far.
I mean, I guess that I think it's that was supposed to happen in that first episode and was a bit of a failure of storytelling. Is I think what's going on. I think we're supposed to be on board with it too, because well, we saw what happened in the ice castle, and with that not landing, everything she's done since has kind of had a
But nothing happened there, right?
yada yada.
They fought a troll.
There was they found the symbol of Sauron, that little claw thing.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe my lawyer training for I'm saying inconclusive here. It's circumstantial.
I agree. I think that they did not enough successfully do that. Yes.
Yeah, to sail your army across the world for if to go pick a fight over here. If I'm a Numenorian.
Yeah.
But they end up doing it because that they need there to be a show here, I guess.
Yeah. I'm a little interested in the humans in the small village. I guess this is the episode I haven't watched yet. Who are struggling with the taint of having helped Morgoth.
Yeah, that's the highlight for me.
Yeah,
the standout here is the original creation. The original creations of the show that are not pulled from the Silmarillion or wherever is that Adar the villain and Arondir the elf who's got the human baby mama. And I mean he gets some real Legolas shit to do. And then
well, he was doing it in the orc pit early on.
Yeah,
like he's clearly their action guy. They're the guy who's going to do fun stunts and shit. That's
there's some cool shit in the next one.
Yeah,
and that guy, I think that actor is just really like has presence. I've never heard of him before, but is he the next guy we need to start fan casting and everything? Like possibly, because I don't think everybody is pulling off the elf thing that great. It turns out it's kind of a weird narrow register that you're kind of forced into playing Tolkien elves.
And not Elrond is doing less than like he's not hitting it at all. Galadriel kinda, Gil-galad not really, but yeah, that guy, what's his name? Arondir, is that it?
That's the elf name, yeah.
Yeah,
the actor's name is Ismail something Cruz.
He's a standout.
A dash name.
Yeah, that is interesting that the elves aren't landing in this very well. I guess that's another reason I like the Harfoots. They're all nailing the hobbits. They're really pulling off Hobbit.
Maybe this is a way to tie it to our House of the Dragon to talk earlier too, because where I think that that show has this hill to climb of focusing in centering the Targaryens so much.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Crazy
Rings of
elves, yeah.
Power having the elves be so central is hard. It doesn't seem like it because they're not like immediately, ugly, or bad, but they're inhuman. They're immortal. Just the humans are in the back seat to the elves.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's sort of by Tolkien design. This takes place during the Age of the Elves.
Yeah.
And the Lord of the Rings books proper take place as the elves. The men are for real taking over for the elves. Although I saw somebody mention somewhere that like the first elf that ever existed like must have opened his eyes and immediately just said, "I am diminished."
I
Like,
you're not wrong about this. This
there's
is
a
the
thing
thing.
that
Yeah.
Tolkien spent 5,000 years like quitting Twitter.
Yeah. I mean, theoretically, it shouldn't be a problem. I mean, I guess this is another thing even Dragon Age struggles with is the elves and the and how do you
Very
handle
different elves in Dragon Age, though. I mean,
Yeah.
they look similar, but
Mhm.
culturally vastly different.
Right, they're the underclass in that, but like, but they are immortal beings, and and sort of ethereal, and there's it's harder to make them relatable,
And
but
superhuman. I
it
mean,
doesn't
that's the thing. If
seem.
they're reaction heroes
Mhm.
that are also sort of
Right.
superheroes that are like unstoppable.
I mean, this is not a problem that the movies have. I guess
Yep.
because they're limited in their elves.
Yes, they're more judicious about that. You
Yeah.
get the human cast and the Hobbit cast, I guess. Hobbits
Hmm.
read as more human than elves in
Yeah,
some
they're
ways.
sort of like potato-y humans. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, and this is a problem in the Hobbit with the dwarves too. There's too many
Mhm.
goddamn dwarves. And
Too many, yeah.
yeah, so
Hard to keep them straight.
uh-huh. So that is a thing. Um, I think the biggest issue for me with this show and with House of the Dragon, and I think with Andor, is that I'm not entirely sold that any of them have completely justified their existence beyond. We're going to do a really good job of this brand extension. We're going to continue with this intellectual property, and we're gonna keep giving people what they want with Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones and Star Wars and all these things. And I'm really feeling with all three of these on top of one another, the lack of invention, even as they are getting everyone's best effort. Like the creatives behind these obviously aren't looking at them in that way. They have gotten a lot of energy and a lot of money spent and a lot of work done.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I think they're three better examples than most of
I agree.
IP
They
brand
are.
extension. And of the three, I guess I'm most concerned about Lord of the Rings justifying itself on those terms. Because I feel like Andor has the most of its season left to go. So I'm like, okay, we had the weird 3-episode prologue. We're finally like into the first act of this story in episode 4. And I have some faith in Tony Gilroy. Doesn't seem like the type of person who would do this solely for the check and not
It's an
like
opportunity.
commit to doing two. I mean, he committed to doing 2 seasons of this, not just one. And I don't think that's because Disney wanted to spend the money on 2 seasons at once. I think it's because he said, well, I got this idea and it's going to take this long. So I think, I mean, God, I'm going to feel dumb when it turns out like every other Disney Plus streaming show and just sort of peters out in the middle. And
Absolutely possible. Always a chance. Always
Yeah.
possible. Yes.
But that one, I think it's on the right track to doing that. It hasn't quite gotten there yet, but it's also got the most track left ahead of it. With House of the Dragon, I would agree, but also just being familiar with the source material, I know that, yeah, we're definitely in the prologue still, because
Fair enough.
I know the fireworks factory is up here, and
I'm into
they're
it.
going to get there.
It's going to be really hard for that show to ever reach Game of Thrones at its height, though.
For sure.
Like I feel like it's going to be chasing that its entire run, and maybe it has the narrative juice to get there. It's got the money, it's got the cast to pull those moments off, but it's familiar. It's giving me what I want, and it's just kind of like, well, let's come back to this. I have enjoyed Game of Thrones in the past, so I'm sure I'll enjoy this, and I will. But like, it is possible for this to do the Better Call Saul thing and really have its own identity and its own personality beyond just more of what we liked?
That's a reasonable question, a good one. I think the best thing it has in that vein, what it's sort of like putting its chips on, is that it is going to be a Game of Thrones that is more focused on, I guess, on women in power as the drivers of.
That was a thing in parts of Game of Thrones. So there were seasons where that was the state of affairs. And I mean, yeah, and there's definitely room for new stuff, but less room than there was when Game of Thrones happened, like a lot less. Mm-hmm. It's still, I mean, it's using the same music in the opening credits, it's that sort of thing, that will always be a part of this, where it is a little beholden to what came before. Yeah. And that is ultimately the problem with all of these, with every Star Wars that's come out since 1983, is that we got to keep this thing going.
Yeah. One sidebar on that opening credit sequence, like, I don't mind them reusing the music at all. I think that's a good piece of music and all.
It's fine.
I like that. What they really should have done, or just do it for the second season even, is bring back the map in the opening credits. That's going to be very, very useful. I still, having read the source material and watched 7 hours of the show, still don't really have a bead on where Driftmark, the island of House Valerian, actually is.
That's a good point. I also don't know what I'm looking at in that opening credits. It's some sort of contraption again, sort of. But
is that a model of King's Landing, or is it a model of old Valyria that is what Viserys is doing? It's not the strongest. Honestly, I feel like every fantasy show should crib from that and just put the map over the credits. There's a reason why every fantasy novel has a map after the cover or the title page.
The Rings opening credits is kind of cribbing from Game of Thrones too, but I wish it was a map. I wish the Sands were showing me a map or something at least.
Exactly,
that would be helpful.
They show that they occasionally put a map into the show proper. That
they do.
And
like Raiders
unfortunately, like all that really, the only way that really oriented me was underlining just how far away Numenor is from any of these other problems that Galadriel wants them to go solve.
Of course,
and being like, why do you need to be a part of this at all? But yeah, Lord of the Rings is the one I think that it's got the furthest to go to justifying itself. And to me, the highlight of that show so far has been the Arondir, that human village stuff. And that is because that's where the standout characters are original creations of the show, I think.
And fresh drama. It's like that is, like a system, like a state of affairs that I'm kind of interested to see play out, that feels like a quadrant of Dragon Age, where you're like, oh, now you're around the people who are tainted by Morgoth, like there's an orc army coming, and they have their own goals. That's all like a contained thing that is a narrative without having to understand the backstory of Mithril and Numenor and the succession of the Silmarils from where the elves are now and why they are and where they're going.
Even going back to what we were talking about before with the elves, I think the reason why Arondir, the elf, is working like better than some of the others is because he's surrounded by humans. The way that Legolas was. And technically that's true of Galadriel too over in Numenor, but there's just more stuff happening in the Southlands. More
she's imperious and aloof, and he is, his entire narrative is about how he is affected by his proximity to humans.
Right.
Yeah.
And also like doing action stuff. He's interacting with the villains, and it's not all just a hypothetical threat for them on that side of the world. The other thing that it might be the most interesting thing that Lord of the Rings has done, but also I'm not sure that that it will work with the Adar stuff. Is that his whole deal is that he's trying to create a homeland for the orcs and sort of create.
Oh wow!
Treating he wants the orcs treated as sentient species with a right to life, and on the one hand,
that's a new idea.
It's a new idea. It's kind of interesting, and as when you're really mining Tolkien this deep, like, do you eventually have to address that somehow? Probably, but also I kind of wonder, like, do you break this world if we have to respect orc life? Like,
it's like the droids, if they're sentient. Oh no,
yeah. That Legolas surfing down that shield is playing a lot differently all of a sudden. Realize he orphaned 4 orc children on that one set of stairs. Um,
That'll be a tough thing to pull off. But that is
yeah.
interesting. I'm curious to see how they handle that, though. That's cool. All right.
Oh, you're interested in Lord of the Rings now. We've made progress here.
I mean, I guess I'm gonna stick with it. I mean, it looks too good to just sort of write off, and so much ambition and it has been spent, and they're doing it. I got to see how that plays out, and it's not bad. None of these are bad.
No.
I just don't think any of them are great necessarily. And of the three, I think right now, I think Andor might end up being my top, but right now it says the Dragon.
They've all got their potential, though.
Yeah, they certainly
and I do
do.
that, even including Lord of the Rings, because I think eventually, Elrond and the Harfeet and everything will get into an actual storyline and out of the prologue, and that's when the show has the chance, I think, to actually take off.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to happen this season. Is the thing. I don't know if we're getting there in 2022, but you know what? It is good enough that I'm going to keep going with it for sure. It's an event. It's fun to talk about with people. And they're all in on it clearly. So yeah, I'm going to keep going on it. I'm curious enough.
Yeah. Like it or not, we're going to have to reconvene when House of the Dragon and Lord of the Rings have ended their seasons and do the whole Force Mortem thing. So I'll see you then, bud.
All right, man. Thank you.